Congressman Bart Stupak joins me live in his first cable network interview since the vote. Congressman Stupak, thank you so much for being here. Let me start with the criticism that you are receiving now from pro-life groups who were in your corner up until last night. And their first criticism, sir, is that they claim this executive order, which may clarify things a bit, isn't worth the paper it is printed on and can never trump congressional law. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, it is worth more than the paper it's written on, as court cases and history shows us that the executive order has the full force of law. It is just as good as having a law. Would I have liked to have had a law? Would I have liked to have had the Stupak amendment that was passed in the House in the Senate bill? Absolutely. But we can only get 45 votes in the Senate, 45 pro-life votes of the senators, so there is no way it could become law. So you're dealt with the Senate bill, which I do believe, especially in the community health centers, could provide abortions at those locations and actually pay for it with taxpayer funds. So in this executive order that we negotiated with the White House, they have unequivocally said there will be no abortions at the community health centers. They will not be paid for, and a number of other protections are put in. This is a very good executive order. As soon as the president signs it, which we expect tomorrow, it will have the full force and effect of law.
What is to stop this openly pro-choice president from reversing himself on this? We've seen him reverse himself on the other deals that were offered to get senators' votes in connection with this bill. What is to stop him from reversing himself on this executive order now that he's got your vote?
Well, that's why we've asked for it to be public. We will have a public signing of this document.
The Senate deals were public, too.
I know. And you're right, Megyn. There is nothing that would stop this president from a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, of repealing this executive order. But there comes a point in time when you have nothing to stop the abortions that you believe will happen in the community health centers, or at least a document to say, look, we promised, because it is a full force and effect of law, if the president would revoke it, there's nothing that would stop either pro-life groups or pro-choice groups from going to court and challenge this executive order, saying it should stay in force.
But Congressman Stupak, the response from your supporters would be, yes, there was something that would have stopped this, and that would have been your no vote. If you and your pro-life contingent of Democrats had voted no, Nancy Pelosi didn't have the votes. This thing passed by 219. She needed 216. Without you and your pro-life contingent, this would not have passed.
Well, by the time the vote came up, as I've always said, I had 12 members who were standing strong with me. We didn't have 12 members by the time we got to the end of the vote.
You had 4.
Probably about 4. You're right. But so you killed a bill, and we do not have health care. As you know, I've always said I want to see health care for the nation. Look, we've stayed true to those principles.
But you always said, Congressman Stupak, you did stay true to it. You always said you wanted health care reform, but you always said you were not going to vote yes if there was funding, public funding for abortion. That's why it's so confusing, because Megyn, you're acknowledging that the president could reverse himself in this executive order, and you're acknowledging that if you hadn't voted yes with that contingent, the bill would have failed. So I'm trying to understand what did it.
Megyn, whether it's an executive order or even a statute, the next Congress, even this Congress, can overturn a law in the next 6 months. I mean, the only option you had was leave the Senate language or strengthen it to prevent abortions under an executive order. That's what we did. We stayed true to those principles. Or vote no. And when we got the executive order, the 3 pages that very clearly says Hyde stays in effect. The Hyde language of no public funding for abortion stays in effect. That one in the hand is always better than 2 in the bush. And in this case here, we stayed true to the principle, and at the same time, America won with a health care bill that will help them out.
What about, Congressman Stupak, you were on this program a couple times before, and we talked about your objections to the Senate bill. And one of them was the community health centers that you mentioned that we're going to get. It's between $9 and $11 billion of public funding, and there was a question about whether they would use it for abortions. Okay, so that is spoken to in the executive order. But your other big concern all along has been that in the exchange, when people buy insurance through the exchange that's going to be created, they are going to be required to donate $1 of their premiums for an abortion fund. And when women need abortions under their insurance plans, that fund, those taxpayer dollars will be used to pay for abortion. And I said to you, well, how do you respond to the other side's argument that, look, women can select whether they want to be in a plan that funds abortion, or if they don't want to be in a plan that funds abortion, they pick the one that doesn't fund abortion. And you said women aren't going to look at which plan funds abortion and which aren't. They're going to say, I just need coverage. And their dollars are inadvertently going to be going for funding abortions. None of that is addressed by the executive order. How did you resolve that issue for yourself?
Yes. Look in the executive order. It says under this act, which is the health care bill, Hyde language shall apply. Hyde language shall apply. So I think we've adequately covered it in the executive order.
Are you telling me you think now no longer are people going to be required to send that dollar, that separate dollar for abortion coverage, in under these exchange plans?
I think underneath the executive order, as dictated, I believe women will not have to do that, or men won't have to do that. They can still buy a plan, but I'm not too sure they're going to have to pay the $1. That actually, it says in the executive order, Labor Secretary of HHS shall within 180 days bring up the rules and regulations that stay consistent with the Hyde language, and they spell it out. So I think we've probably got 180 days to see how they're going to apply this. That provision that you speak of, and the executive order also mentions it, doesn't go into effect until 2014. And as the colloquy on the floor was last night with Chairman Waxman, we're still going to have further discussions on this. We basically have about 4 years yet to address this aspect of that bill on the exchanges.
I read the executive order. I don't see it clearly as you stated, but I'll tell you this, that the pro-choice groups have come out, and they say, this is from Planned Parenthood, what the president's executive order did not do is include the complete and total ban on private health insurance coverage for abortion that Congressman Stupak had insisted on. They're very thankful about that. Now came out and said, we've got a long-standing objection to the Hyde Amendment, and they're hoping to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which, in other words, the pro-choice groups don't think that you got the job done, and they're thankful for that.
And the pro-choice groups are also, as you just said, are not happy with it.
The pro-life and the pro-choice are upset with you.
Yeah, obviously it must be a good piece of legislation then if both sides are mad at you.
Congressman Stupak, what do you say? Last night on the floor, we heard, as you were making your remarks, somebody, and we don't know who, shout out baby killer as you were making your comments.
Right.
What do you make of it?
Look, we can disagree on these issues, and as we should have a meaningful debate, but personal attacks have no place on it, so I don't engage in it. I wish the other members would not do the same, but we've seen in the last year just total incivility at times when, whether it's the president, myself, or others are trying to speak or conduct themselves in proper demeanor on the floor. You always have this disruptive, uncivilized behavior. And
how do you react to the pro-life movement, which was so proud of you and standing behind you and all along, and now, is very, very disappointed in you, according to the releases that we've seen? And they say, let me give you the quote, that you've been stripped now of your Defender of Life award you were going to get from the Susan B. Anthony list for your efforts. And they said, Stupak has not only failed to stand strong for unborn children, but also for his constituents and pro-life voters across the country.
Well, I would just say to Susan B. Anthony, they can give their Defender of Life award, whoever they choose. I did not do it to win an award. I did it because I stood for the principle to protect the sanctity of life. I've done that. Not only do we have Hyde language through an executive order applied, if I would have followed Susan B. Anthony's way, it wouldn't have worked. So I'm pleased with the work we did and continue to stand for the principle of life.
Listen, Bart Stupak, we appreciate you came back on and interviewed me way back in September and predicted that there was going to be this dust-up, and you've been a stand-up guy about coming on and defending your position, whatever it is, and we appreciate you doing that again today.
Thanks, Megyn.
All the best to you, Congressman Bart Stupak.